Once upon a time, there was a man. His name, age, and occupation aren't important for this story. What is important is the fact that he likes anime. He was so enthralled with it that he had the audacity to want to share his opinions about it with other people. I personally have never met someone like this in my life, but I suppose this story is purely fictional. He waltzed into insert anime convention name here with the gusto of a big shot CEO walking into his company building. Spotting a fellow fan with an I Survived Endless 8 t-shirt on, he struck up a conversation with him about Kyoto animation. They ended up talking for so long that I began to curse the amount of oxygen they were using to spew this pointless nonsense. Finally though, their conversation turned to Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions, a 2012 romantic comedy.
Yeah, so I really loved the first season of that show, but god, that second one just ruined the whole thing for me.
Wait, really? I personally thought both seasons were about the same in terms of quality.
The second the man let those words out of his mouth, he knew that he had made a grave mistake. His soon-to-be ex-acquaintance's eyebrows twitched, and he slowly backed away from him, reaching for a button placed conveniently on the wall behind him.
Please, tell me this is all just a misunderstanding.
What? No, I really think that it's good.
An alarm blares throughout the convention hall as everyone turns their gaze towards the man, their eyes filled with contempt and malice. Suddenly, the roof of the building opens up with incredible force, giving way to several attack helicopters. Perhaps they noticed the predicament the man had got himself into and are here to help him escape. No, scratch that. They are gunning him down right now. Wow, that is a lot of blood. Well, I hope the man has learned a valuable lesson about revealing controversial opinions about anime to other people. Never again will anyone be so foolish as to try to defend Season 2 of Chunibyo in front of hundreds of people. Alright, are we done? Alright, cool, thank god, I finally stopped talking like that. Anyways, I'm gonna try to defend Season 2 of Chunibyo in front of hundreds of people. To start things off, I want to go over everything that I believe made Season 1 great, because it's hard to explain why I think Season 2 is just as good if you don't understand where I'm coming from. So, to get us all on the same page, Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions is a show about a blossoming romance between two teenagers, Rika Takanashi and Yuta Togashi. Rika is afflicted with Chunibyo, otherwise known as 8th grade syndrome. It's a term used to define somebody in their adolescence who views themselves as being far more important, talented, or intelligent than they actually are. There are many types, Rika's being the evil eye, meaning that she pretends that she has magical powers. Yuta used to be just like her, but he's gotten over it by the time he meets her. In fact, just the mere mention of how he used to behave sends him into a frenzy of embarrassment. With a wacky premise like that, you may not be surprised to hear that my #1 source of enjoyment from this show was the comedy. I didn't really appreciate it when I first watched it, but I guess I just wasn't as acquainted with anime humor as I am now. Tatsuya Ishihara has directed a lot of shows for Kyoto Animation, and one thing that ties them all together for me is their excellent comedic timing. Everything happens so fast, this show knows how wild its characters are and will smash cut to their insanity to leave you shocked, confused, and on the floor laughing. One day, Yuta is in his room playing a visual novel, saying, "Dang it, I think my real-life relationship is about to have a bad ending because I haven't triggered the right flags," which I'm not even going to touch. And then it cuts to Rika showing up under his bed saying, "I know what you mean, bro." When asked why she's under there, she responds with this. They could have just had Yuta get flustered and snatch the magazine back, but no, this split-second representation of a man dying inside just had to be shown. Man, I just love things that are funny.
Wow, Ben, you must really fucking hate yourself, huh?
No, come on, man. You don't have to go there. Anyways, there are too many great examples of comedy to list. The flower flashbang scenes, the napping club, the bait and switch they do with Nibutani's character, the fact that whenever somebody is embarrassed, they resort to doing this slide kick move that comes out of nowhere, and hey, even some of the Chunibyo scenes are funny. I really liked it when Rika tried inputting the Konami code on a vending machine in the hopes of scoring a free drink, and the scene where she and Dekomori say that their water guns give them a 3.88% movement speed multiplier. I think I just like video games. Speaking of Chunibyo though, it does something incredibly important for this show that I never see anybody talking about. Take a gander at this collage of shows. This is a list of several of the most prominent romance anime I've seen, and now I'd like to show you how many of these shows made it to the end without making me sink into my chair out of secondhand embarrassment. You might notice that you can only see Clannad on your screen now. Chunibyo, however, may have found a way to sit alongside it because it utilizes a special tactic that nullifies any amount of discomfort this awkward romance could make you feel. You might recognize it, it's called cheating, because if there's one thing that makes me wince more than anime romance, it's this blue-haired dumbass with her stupid eye patch telling me about how she's best friends with Zagorth the Lustful, and how he teaches her his dark incantations of unspeakable hideosity which have led her down the path of never-ending sin. Wait a minute, what if some of you haven't even seen the show before? That's not going to translate very well. Another thing more uncomfortable than anime romance would be me reminding you in every video that I have a Patreon link in the description. This is one of the only times in media history I can think of where two wrongs have made a right. Every single romance scene has bits of Chunibyo nonsense sprinkled into them, making for a scene that is so uncomfortable that it wraps around to the point where I can just watch it and enjoy it. If I had to guess why this works, it's probably because the show built up my tolerance levels for this stuff in the episodes leading up to the big romance plot. I've mentioned this before, but I take notes whenever I watch a show for a video, and the stuff I wrote down for the beginning of season 1 compared to the end of it is telling to say the least. I went from losing my mind during Rika's shenanigans and celebrating whenever Yuta smacked her to getting amusement out of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen a fictional character do. And since seeing someone with Chunibyo do their thing is infinitely more embarrassing than watching two high school kids fuck up basic love stuff, I suppose I can put this show on the list too. But I'm not that happy about it. In fact, to make it up to me, I demand that you have charming characters and great slice of life scenarios, and make sure you get it done and on my desk by 10 years ago. This show is just relaxing to watch. As an average Kyoto animation appreciator, I am obligated to like shows that depict the normal lives of its characters. There aren't any real standout moments in season 1, but there are dozens of small details that build up the world as a believable place for these characters to inhabit. Speaking of our cast, I'd like to focus solely on one character for this part. Toka Takanashi is Rika's older sister, and she's a pretty minor character all things considered. In spite of this, she's extremely lovable due to her cold, deadpan demeanor that makes everything she says have comedic value. Her softer side that still has traces of her twisted personality, which is shown when she does stuff like play pretend divorce court with Yuta's youngest sister. The fact that she's seemingly everywhere at once and has the miraculous ability of recording every conversation ever said is great. And finally, there's that ladle she carries around, which she uses both to cook delicious food for people and fucking kill them. Almost every single character is like this, so instead of waterboarding you with positive character trait after positive character trait, just let it sink in that I had this many nice things to say about one side character. Finally, season 1 concludes with a pretty good emotional character arc. The conflict that arises from trying to figure out whether or not Rika's Chunibyo is an unhealthy coping mechanism for the death of her father is a compelling one. I'll admit, I was 100% on team get rid of your powers and be normal up until it was time for Rika to pack up all the weird stuff in her room and get rid of it. She seems to be struggling, and when Yuta asks what's up, she says, "I don't remember what I'm meant to put away and what not to." All of a sudden, this became less about ensuring this girl copes with her loss in the right way and more about stripping away her sense of identity in order to make her more like everybody else. Yuta's determination when he realizes his mistakes and the support he gets from his friends is wonderful, and it all ends with them running away from a police car on a bike, the true essence of youth. The narrator also gives a beautiful speech about how everyone has weird habits and beliefs that make them who they are, as we're all just trying to override the negatives in our lives and become content with who we are as people. It's nice. There are breathtaking visuals that enhance the story beats tremendously. The OST has some great tracks, including this one that I'm still trying to learn, even though I have to reach across a whole octave for 90% of the song with my tiny ass hands. And you know what? Everything I just praised Season 1 for is also in Season 2. Comedy first. The hunting jokes are back in full force, so it immediately gets points from me. There's great slapstick, amazing reaction shots. Toka is still the queen of saying something ridiculous with a straight face. Rika is still doing stupid stuff like drilling holes into Yuta's ceiling so she could pretend to be Spider-Man. And I think the funniest moment in the entire show comes when Dekomori goes for the iconic slide kick on Nibutani. But knowing her tricks by now, she just picks her up and As for the criticisms I've read about Season 2's comedy, most of them are directed towards Ishiki. He was a stereotypical best friend character in Season 1 who filled the role decently well, but over time he devolves into a gag character who's only really there to be laughed at and then sent away again. I agree that most of his jokes aren't the best and sometimes they're pretty insensitive, but I'm not going to pretend like turning this guy into a punching bag is some sort of great loss. In fact, I think it's pretty funny that he starts off as a forgettable but decently likable dude who turns into someone that the main cast doesn't even remember. And let's be real here, did you really think the writers had big plans for the character who created a damn tier list for every girl in his class? I think they were much more focused on giving us cool slice of life stuff to enjoy. This is an aspect of Season 2 that I think is better than 1. When I look back on the events that take place in Season 1, all that really comes to mind is the trip to Rika's grandparents' house. In Season 2, you've got the class trip, all the beach episodes, because unless your name is Key, your anime isn't real if it doesn't have a beach episode, and the competitive napping match, which is definitely the highlight of the whole show. I didn't even know competitive napping was a thing, and it's such a wacky, unique, and entertaining premise for a slice of life episode. Romance-wise and story-wise, I see a lot of people throwing rocks at Season 2 for 2 reasons. The first is that the romance moves too slow. I mean, these two have been dating for over 6 months and they've only ever held hands. That's embarrassing. Even so, the show tells us that this is the whole point. Rika ends Season 1 by accepting the person she's become. So a second season that shows her refusing to conform to society's standard of love and doing things her own way is a natural progression in my eyes. And it's not like they failed to make any sort of progress during this season. I would take issue if things stayed the same or regressed in some way, but towards the end of the show it feels like they take a small yet impactful step forward every single episode. I know this may disappoint some of you mavericks who reverse cowgirl on the 3rd date, but I think this slow pace is meaningful towards the story they were trying to tell. Speaking of the story, that second grievance I hear a lot is that this is an unnecessary sequel, and I can understand the sentiment. Season 1 ends with a nice little bow on top. It works well as a self-contained story and did not need to be continued. However, I don't think that's a good enough reason to dismiss a sequel as pointless. For a piece of media to have an unnecessary sequel, I feel like they need to cross some kind of line. Maybe the original creators aren't making the thing in question anymore, and the result is something that pales in comparison to the original. Maybe the series has been milked so dry that another entry makes you think you'd rather throw your wallet into a furnace. Or maybe the original story ended on such a perfectly definitive note that the very idea of a continuation makes you sick to your stomach. Why the fuck do you exist? But Season 2 of Chunibyo does none of these things. It's the second season of a show, made by the same people, and as I've discussed already, I think it maintains the same relative level of quality throughout. And yes, that does include Little Miss Pinkhair here. Satone Shichimiya is probably the most controversial addition to Season 2, and from what I've read, there are 2 main reasons. Reason 1, she's annoying and she gets in the way of Rika and Yuta's relationship. Being childhood friends with Yuta and a Chunibyo herself, she has a lot of old habits involving him that really get under Rika's skin. That nose-touching thing, always referring to him as hero, that kind of stuff. Nobody likes a homewrecker, and given how slow the pace of the romance is to begin with, becoming a roadblock for it paints a massive target on your back. For me though, I see Satone as a more fun version of Rika. She has more energy with much less moodiness and sass, plus she isn't nearly as stupid. She always seems to just materialize out of thin air whenever the group is doing something fun, which always made me write something along the lines of "hell yeah, she's back" in all caps in my notes. She's also extremely kind, always willing to help out her friends, even if it brings her great pain to do so. My one criticism towards her likability though is that her laugh is absolutely grating, and in one episode she does it like 5 times, which is absolutely unacceptable. shut up, we're trying to sleep. I get it, you play Street Fighter in your spare time, but if you copy Karen's laugh one more time, I'm gonna stop defending you. Okay, so about her getting between Rika and Yuta, she really doesn't. Their relationship still progresses in spite of her presence, and whenever Rika gets jealous of them, she only becomes more determined to do something special for Yuta that Satone never could. And in case you were upset with Rika for getting jealous in the first place, let's set one thing straight. She's a teenager, and on top of that, she's a dumbass. I don't expect these people to act like rational adults, and neither should you. Sometimes characters face problems that are so easy to solve that it becomes annoying watching them struggle. But this whole romance thing that nobody on screen has any experience in is not on that list. I don't think you can hold Satone's feelings for Yuta resurfacing against her for the same reason, but we'll get to that. Reason number 2, her introduction is extremely contrived, which is often wrapped around to that whole no reason to exist argument. For me, I only call contrivance when somebody acts out of character for the sake of the plot, or something so stupid happens that it feels as though the hand of God poofed this scene into existence. Let's examine what happens here. Rika's sister moves out of her apartment in order to pursue her career as a chef. Satone moves in, seeing as it's probably one of the only vacant apartments in this complex. This apartment is located right above Yuta's, so they are now neighbors. Gee, what an unrealistic fantasy scenario. Unbelievable, really. It's also not like this is a common trope in storytelling that no one's had a problem with until now. For example, nobody complained when they did it in season 1. Sarcasm aside, I feel like this goes back to something I said in my school days video. If you watch a show and all you can think about is the writer deliberately placed this here so they could accomplish this, and this, develop this character, blah blah blah, then I think it's already lost you. This goes double for slice of life shows, where the entire point is to immerse you into the lives of its characters. Personally, I view the drama in both seasons of this show as a real predicament the characters have gotten themselves into, and I hope they find a solution for it. Uh-oh, Rika's trauma about her deceased father is exposed, and she's unsure of how to move forward. Well, I like Rika, and the show has done a good job of making me enjoy peering into its world, so I become engaged with her search for a solution. Uh-oh again. Satone's feelings for Yuta come back to her while he already has a girlfriend. Well, I like Satone, and this is the same world with arguably better slice of life scenarios, so I'm still engaged with her search for a solution. Also, can we talk about how well she handles this whole thing? The minute she realizes it's a serious problem, she pulls Yuta aside and attempts to face the issue head on in her own strange little way. I cannot think of a single high school anime character who works up the balls to handle a romantic problem by themselves, and once she realizes that it's too much for her, she decides to bottle everything up in order to not hurt anybody but herself. It's a believable thought process that made me want to root for her. Also, here's a cool thing about the conclusion of her arc. Throughout the show, she gets chastised for still being a Chunibyo after so long, and she always responds with "I'll never change." Another one of her habits is refusing to say goodbye to others, an action that left Yuta discontent with how their friendship seemingly ended in middle school. At the end of the season, once Satone has conquered her feelings and is ready to move on, she has one last conversation with Yuta where he asks what she changed to get over this whole thing. She repeats her earlier sentiments, saying nothing, "I'll never change," and then she tells him goodbye. Like, come on, that's pretty good. All in all, I like season 2 a lot. I think its strengths and weaknesses when compared to season 1 balance out nicely, resulting in a pretty good follow-up to an overall pretty good show, and nothing could ever possibly, who am I kidding? This video was a sham, a ruse, and you fell for my traps so easily. Season 1, Episode 2, 12 minutes and 36 seconds in. Now you see it. The reason why Season 2 never stood a chance against the masterpiece that is the original. Yes, that's right. Season 1 is superior because it has Botan. Oh my god, it's my favorite thing ever. The best thing I've ever witnessed in my entire life.
That's the thing from the
just
profile
don't get
picture.
any better than this. I'm gonna cry and call my mom.
Smart and handsome uses it.
But yeah, so sorry for lying to you for however long this video is. Special thanks to Silent Secondary and the rest of my wonderful patrons.